The internet is an interesting place. On one hand, you've got the happy bit. Endless videos filled with memes, funny animals, laughing kids, happy music, and just soul-fulfilling content. But what about the other, more darker side of the internet? Well, that's why you're here, isn't it? The side that's not so happy. The creepier side. The more disturbing side. The most disturbing part of all is the fact that this side doesn't even have to be searched for on places like the dark web or other more hidden sites, because it exists right under our noses, right on the surface, right here. Russian YouTuber Stas Reflay, also known as Stanislav Reshetnikov, was originally a gaming YouTuber. Becoming a largely recognized gaming YouTuber is no easy task, and Stas found himself trying and trying, but not really getting anywhere. So, what's his solution, you ask? Live streams, or actually, trash streaming. The basic idea behind trash streaming is straightforward. You invite some friends for drinks, live stream your party, and complete days for donations. However, it turns out that when money is involved, the stakes get higher and more dangerous. In these live streams, Stas made money by pepper spraying his girlfriend or making his friend drink oil. Nothing too hectic, right? Wrong. On December 2nd of 2020, Stas ended up taking things a little too far. A viewer pledged $1,000 for Stas to beat his girlfriend, Valentina, and lock her outside, in Moscow, in the middle of winter. So Stas did it for $1,000. He poured water over Valentina, then locked her outside. She banged on the door for 2 hours. Viewers kept on donating. Stas eventually pulled the pregnant Valentina inside, only to find her unconscious and a bluish-grey color. He tried and tried to revive her, gave up, and then continued to stream. He phoned the paramedics, and they eventually arrived. Stas continued filming them, even though they had asked him not to. He's now sentenced to 6 years in prison. The hunger for money and fame costed Valentina her life. IMA is a Reddit community for question and answer interactive interviews termed AMA, short for Ask Me Anything. People will state who or what they are, and Reddit is free to ask them any questions. People will usually start their post with "I am A," followed by a phrase such as "a Korean barbecue server who has been doing this for 5 years. Ask me anything." Now, not all of these posts are interesting, light-hearted Q&As. Some of them are pretty disturbing topics, like incest, darker thoughts, and even cannibalism. If you have a weak stomach when it comes to this sort of thing, viewer discretion is advised. 4 years ago, Reddit user Incredibly Shiny Shot posted this. "Hi all. I am a man who ate a portion of his own amputated leg. Ask me anything." So, the quick and dirty. About 2 years ago, I was hit on my motorcycle. They salvaged my foot, but I would never be able to walk on it. I elected to have it amputated. I asked the doctors to keep it. I signed some papers. I got it back, and with the help of some friends, cooked a portion of the tibialis anterior. This is the proof that OP posted. The poster even had a group of friends who were keen on a taste. So they all got together, cooked it up, and made tacos. The Redditor answered most of the questions asked. OP commented on a thread in the Ask Reddit community, and J. Prince stated, "To be fair, you can still be a cannibal if you eat people that were already murdered." OP replied with, No, guys, you just eat limbs that get amputated. That way, everyone can consent." Some other more common questions were, how did your friends react when you called them on the bluff? Did anyone refuse or back out? OP answered with, "I had one person back out, and it's totally understandable. I think there was a lot of, wait, really? Kinda hoping that I'm joking. But it was all happy people who showed up that day. Lots of dark jokes." One commenter just commented the word, "Why?" And this was also a very common question received. OP responded with, "So my friends and I always had this joke. If you could try human flesh in an ethical and healthy way, would you? And we always said of course. Well, the opportunity came up and I called them on it." So what do you think? Do you think this is healthy and ethical? Does this still count as cannibalism if you are eating a section of your own body? Do you think there was anything wrong with what OP and his friends did? I'd love to know your opinion on this topic because I am in two minds about it. A few years ago, a user by the name of Jason in Hull took to the relationship advice Reddit community for advice on what he should do about his cheating wife. Long story short, his wife had been cheating on him with their neighbor, and when OP wanted to leave her, she threatened that he would never see his kids again. All of the original posts have since been deleted, but these are the posts that were recovered by Rare Reddit and posted by the Museum of Reddit community. "I'm a 30-year-old male having a hard time coping with my wife, who's a 29-year-old female, having cheated on me with our neighbor, who's a 51-year-old male. So to go back to the beginning, I had just taken on a new project and new responsibilities at work. I was working a lot of hours, 60 plus hours per week, and was noticeably stressed. It was in May of 2015 that I noticed that she had added a password to her phone. When confronted about it, she told me it was because she was planning my Father's Day presents and didn't want me to ruin the surprise. About a week later, she came to me and told me that she felt guilty, keeping a big secret from me, and told me that she was having our neighbor, a contractor, build a home office for me as my present. It struck me as odd, as in our 6 years together, she has never said she felt guilty about anything, and always insists that she never regrets anything in her life. Time goes on, her phone is still password protected, and things don't feel right. I see her using her phone and smiling to herself more and more often. But when I ask her what she is doing, she says nothing and puts her phone away. So one morning, I wait for her to get in the shower and I grab her phone before it requires the password. I go through her messages and find that she is texting the neighbor, "I am all covered in frosting, you want to lick it off?" There were no other messages to the neighbor, but I found out later that was because she had set up her phone to delete messages after a certain amount of time. I felt uncomfortable with it, but I knew she had a perverted sense of humor, and I thought she would never do anything to hurt me. More time goes by, and the neighbor is spending more and more time at our house, but the office is being completed slower and slower. I can't help but worry that something isn't right, so I start checking her location using Google Timeline. It was at this point that I realized that there are large gaps in her GPS history because she was turning off her phone's GPS. Fast forward to July, and at this point the paranoia is driving me nuts. So I tell her that I need to install new antivirus on her phone. While she has it unlocked for me, I install anti-theft software so I can remotely turn the GPS back on and set up AT&T message backup and restore so I can read all of her text messages from that point on my computer. The next day, my mother asks to spend time with my two kids, so my wife drops them off with her and has the day to herself. I watch my wife's activity from work as she spends the day trying to meet up with a neighbor but is unsuccessful because he is busy with another job site. That night, we get the kids back from my mom's house and we go out to dinner with the neighbor, his girlfriend, and his son. My wife and his girlfriend are having a good time drinking, laughing, and just joking around. His girlfriend mentions that she would like to see Magic Mike XXL. I say it's a good idea. I'll watch the kids so my wife and her can go. So my wife and her go, and the neighbor and I go back to my house so the kids can play video games together. The kids are back in my son's room playing games, and the neighbor is sitting across from me on the other couch. It is at this point that my wife starts texting him. She is describing acts she would like to perform with him, and he is reciprocating. She tells him to check his Snapchat, and at the same time, I get a Snapchat from her too, and it is her performing sexual acts in the bathroom stall. They keep talking, trying to figure out when they can meet up so they can sleep together. They decide on Monday morning after I go to work. So in my head, I'd already planned to pretend to leave and circle back to catch them. But then they tell each other that they love each other, and it is all I can do to not leap off the couch and knock him out. But I contain myself and continue reading the conversation unfolding in front of me. Then he tells her, "You're my girl now," to which she replies, "Always have been," ending with him writing, "and always will be." My wife and the neighbor's girlfriend return from the movie, and I ask them politely to sit down. I then ask the kids to stay in my son's room and shut the door. I return to the living room and confront my wife and the neighbor. I say, "So you two love each other, huh?" My wife goes into full-blown denial mode, and the neighbor's girlfriend starts smacking him. I ask my wife if she has been texting him. She says no. So I show her the text messages. She admits to it, but says it was the first time it had gone that far. I ask my wife if she has sent him pictures. She says no. So I show her the picture. She admits it, but says it was the first time. I ask her if she is sleeping with him, and she says no. Because I didn't wait to catch them sleeping together, I didn't have evidence to prove her wrong, so that one stayed unresolved. I tell her that I am leaving her. She tells me that she will make sure I never see my kids again if I do. She planned on using the fact that I had attempted suicide in high school to prove me unfit to have the children. She continues to say that it was my fault for being so busy with work and stressed out, that she just wanted someone she could talk to. Then she gives me an ultimatum to decide what I'm going to do, or she will decide for me. The neighbor's girlfriend starts defending the two of them, saying that it couldn't have been serious if they weren't sleeping together, and that my wife and I are too perfect together to let this break us up. The neighbors go home, and my wife and I argue for the rest of the night about what we are going to do. We go to bed separately, having not resolved anything. We keep going back and forth on the subject all weekend, and finally settle on we were going to separate temporarily while we figure out what we want. I was going to stay in the house, and she was going to take the kids and go to her mom's house. That Monday, I go to work and get a text from her in the middle of a meeting with my bosses stating that she had explained things to our kids, but that they were upset and I need to explain it to them as well. I get home from work and find my kids crying. She had told them that mommy had to move out because dad was mad at her. When my son wanted to stay with me, she told him that he can't. My son put it together that if mommy has to move out because I'm mad at her, and he must move out, then I must have been mad at him too. My daughter was crying because my son was. I don't think she was old enough to understand what was happening. It was at that moment I realized she was going to drag the kids through hell if I left her, so I swallowed my feelings and begged her to stay. She agreed, and insisted that I apologize to our neighbor since we were still going to need to hang out with him because our sons are good friends. I hate it, but I do it anyway. We still hang out with them from time to time, and they come to our various birthday and holiday parties. But I'd do anything for my kids, and I behave civil every time. Things die down for a while. I still think about it constantly. I worry how I can keep from making her so unhappy that she cheats on me again. Then almost a year from the original incident, around Father's Day again, she sends him pictures again. She claims it was an accident, that she meant to send them to me instead. I don't fully believe her, but I move on anyway. Things have been quiet on that front for about 4 months now, but I still think about it constantly. This is going to sound stupid, but I feel like I have a part of my brain that I can't shut off, that is always thinking. I used to use that to solve programming problems, and it made me very good at my job, But ever since this incident, the only thing it thinks about is her and him, and if I did the right thing. My job performance has suffered, and I feel like I haven't gotten sleep in months. I'm afraid that after this much time, and the fact that I begged her back, that to say that I want a divorce now would only make her more vindictive towards my children and I. I just feel like I have put myself so deep in a hole that I can never get back out. I haven't really talked to anyone about this. I didn't want to talk to my mom about it because I felt she would treat my wife differently, and I didn't need the two fighting any more than they already do. I tried talking to one friend about it, but his advice was to put my trust in God, but that was not much solace for me as I am an atheist. So I have no clue what to do with my feelings or how to move on from this. Redditors at this point, understandably so, gave the advice to divorce her. He seems to have taken the advice as shown in the next post. He says, instead of trying to fix something that she doesn't want to fix, she has refused counseling several times in the past before this even happened. I'm going to get myself and my kids out. I meet with an attorney next week. Thank you everyone for seeing how far I had my head up my ass. It is at this moment that disaster struck. The Museum of Reddit took and compiled the timelines of what happened from the Mirror and AGC news articles. Brandy Worley killed her 7-year-old son Tyler and 3-year-old daughter Charlie just the day after her spouse Jason filed for divorce. I'm not going to read out the transcript of the 911 call because it could be quite distressing to some viewers, but I've linked the audio in the description down below as well as this Reddit post. Montgomery County prosecutors said that it was Jason Worley's mother-in-law's screams of horror that woke him that morning. He ran upstairs and found her in the kitchen and his wife in the living room. Jason said, "That's when I heard Brandy say, 'Now you can't take my children from me.'" Here's a timeline of what happened before the murders. That afternoon, Jason Worley, a software engineer, returned from work and the family went to Charlie's dance practice. After dinner at home, Brandy Worley went to Walmart, telling her husband that she needed pipe cleaners for a school project Tyler was working on. Instead of pipe cleaners, she bought a knife. When she returned home, she hid the knife in Tyler's bedroom before going into the living room, where she and her husband played with their children together, before Jason Worley put them to bed for the last time. Early the following morning, Brandy Worley woke Tyler up for a sleepover in his little sister's room. In Charlie's bedroom, she straddled her son and stabbed him repeatedly. Charlie awoke at one point and asked what her mother was doing. When Brandy Worley told her nothing, Charlie went back to sleep. Once Tyler had passed, Brandy Worley continued on, committing the same act on her daughter. The autopsy showed both children were stabbed multiple times. Worley then stabbed herself more than once in the neck, but ended up surviving. Now you may be asking where Jason was while all of this was happening. Well, in a post a day earlier, he had claimed that his wife had suggested that he sleep on the sofa instead of an air mattress in the basement. He wrote, "I just can't help but wonder that if I had slept on the couch, like she had suggested, instead of an air mattress in the basement, then maybe I could have saved my children, or at the very least died with them. A father has one job in this world, to protect his children, and I failed to do that." Brandy Worley's individual sentences were 55 years for her son and 65 years for her daughter. The sentences are to run consecutively, or one after another. She is now housed in Rockville Correctional Facility, according to state prison records. Shortly after, Jason posted a thank you. This is what he said. "I would like to give a heartfelt and sincere thank you for the advice and support I have received here. No one could have foreseen the tragedy that resulted from me filing for divorce. You guys perform a wonderful service to those in need, and I hope you continue to do so in the future. Edit. I would never ask for donations. I think it is incredibly tacky. I've worked very hard for everything I have in life, but because there's been a GoFundMe created by her family, and I can't guarantee that they won't turn around and use it to support her in some way, I just ask that you help spread the GoFundMe that my employer created for me." He then posted, "If anyone has any experience with GoFundMe that could give me advice, it would be greatly appreciated. My former mother-in-law has created a GoFundMe using my last name and pictures of the children to raise funds for the mother who murdered them. She intends to use them for her daughter's medical and legal expenses. What can and should be done about this?" Shortly after, the moderators of the relationship advice community posted regarding this incident. This is what they said. "It came to us via a Reddit user that the request for advice by Jason in Hull has taken the worst possible turn. For Jason and Hull's sake, we won't repost the details here, though the news update can be found linked here. We're using this post to draw attention to two things. Jason and Hull came to us seeking support, so we encourage anyone who can offer him support, especially local to him, to reach out. Alternatively, there's a GoFundMe page in memory of his children. The intent behind much of the tough love advice in the original thread was obvious to all of us, reading the thread and upvoting comments as well as to Jason and Hull himself. However, the tone used for quite a number of comments was unnecessarily harsh and may have failed to consider the reality of the situation, as best as we could have known, hindsight is 2020. Ultimately, this speaks to the fact that everyone participating here is doing so with limited information and should be open to the possibility that there's more than meets the eye, whenever providing guidance and advice. Going forward, all we ask is to please observe tone when providing advice and realize the potential for complications which might make any advice difficult to follow. Something which seems obvious to any one of us is rarely ever obvious to someone in the weeds of the relationship itself. That said, thank you for supporting Jason and Hull the way all of you did, especially in following up after his first update. Let's see if we can extend that support further. Then finally, Jason gave a final update. The first thing you may notice is this is being posted from a different account. I deleted the Jason and Hull account in a knee-jerk reaction to seeing my Reddit posts in the news. I guess the first question to answer is how am I doing? And to that I would say, I'm doing well. I have bad days, but I would think that is to be expected. It is just important that I, or anyone going through something, continue to use the support of friends and family, as well as good coping skills to not let myself be completely defeated on those bad days. I won't lie. I struggle to get back to where I am. For some time, I refused to sleep because of combination of fear of what I would wake up to and nightmares about that night. For a time, I used alcohol to sleep, but my family loved me enough to take it from me before it became a damaging and permanent habit. I was hospitalized because I did have thoughts of ending my life, because I miss my children so much. From that I learned you should never be ashamed of your mental health, and not seeking treatment will only make it worse, not better. We have all heard it, but if you or a loved one is struggling, seek immediate assistance. Your life is too important to throw away in a moment of weakness. By putting off treatments, I only caused everything else in my life to suffer. I lost my job and became reclusive to the house. But don't worry, I've been back to work since December, and I've nearly regained my former position and salary, so I'm good and require no assistance. The second question would be, how do I feel about the sentencing? That is something that is harder to answer, because no matter what the sentence, nothing will bring back my beloved children. Do I think she should have gotten the death penalty? No, I do not. She wanted to die, and after 9 years of giving her what she wanted, when she wanted it, I was not going to give her another thing. Do I think the life sentence will have any appreciable effect on her? I don't know. One thing she always stressed for the entire time that I knew her was that she lived her life without any regrets. Even after I caught her cheating on me, she continued to say that she had no regrets. As for the ex-in-laws, they continue to be a problem to this day. Shortly after everything happened, they changed the locks on the home I was renting from them, with my property still inside. After trying to civilly negotiate the return of the property, it was required that I involved law enforcement. That is an ongoing legal battle. A member of the family accused me of stealing property I had purchased from them prior to the death of the children, and threatened to take action against me unless I paid double what I had already paid them. I alerted the authorities, and as far as I know, that is resolved. They continue to make visiting my children's grave difficult. During the 1-year anniversary, they sat in their truck and just watched me the whole time I was visiting the grave. Because of that, I don't visit them as often as I would like to. If I can impart on you something I've learned through all of this, is that you should always take time to be with the ones you love. It doesn't matter if they are asking you to read The Pokey Little Puppy for the millionth time, or asking you to play Smash Bros, even though you know they will wipe the floor with you every time. Just do it, because you never know what time will be the last time. Always make sure they know how much you love them. I had the fortune that the last thing my children ever heard me say was, "I love you, good night, I will see you in the morning." It's important to remember that the posts we're offering advice to, or making harsh comments about, have people and families behind them, and the advice we give could, although correct, sometimes even be damaging. The world, although beautiful, can be an incredibly dangerous and scary place. As for the internet, well, that's an even darker place, where people hide behind usernames and seem to care about other humans, even less than they do in the real world. Be careful what you say, be careful what you post, and until next time, stay safe.